Hey everyone, FusedVR coming at ya. And today, here in Facebook Spaces, trying something new out, and leave a comment below if you kind of like this format, or you want to see more about some different topics, or specifically about what we're going to be talking today, which is decentralization and crypto technologies. So, let's just dive into this topic, because there's a bunch to talk about, like why the VR community should care about what's happening in crypto land. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about what is this concept of decentralization. Then following that up, I want to talk a little bit about why that actually matters, especially to the VR community. Then show you a couple projects that are in the space at like a really high level. And last but not least, kind of give you some more resources to go out and do your own research. And the reason I want to give you resources for that is because, as a high-level disclaimer, this is not financial advice. I personally have only been researching about crypto for the last 3 or 4 months, so still relatively new to the space. And as pretty much any YouTuber will say, there's so much going on that you have to do your own research to actually kind of dive in for yourself and make sure you're making the right decisions that feel good for you. So with that out of the way, let's kind of dive into the topic of what is decentralization. So there's a reason why I'm in Facebook Spaces, and that reason is because it allows me to draw. So I think the best way to describe this is to first kind of compare it to our current model, which is centralized networking, which is the fact that you have someone like Facebook. Let's just draw them right here. And you have a bunch of other computers that represent you and me. So let's draw a couple circles just like that. Now, in centralized computing, the way this works is Facebook has like a bunch of different little computers within it, and then you send a request to what is facebook.com, and it runs and connects all its own networks. All the data is still owned by Facebook, all the compute power is owned by Facebook, and then it'll send you back a nice little web page that you can peruse. So that's the centralized model. Now let's move over to what a decentralized model would look like. Now a decentralized model is, let's just draw us first. Just represent that by a nice little Y right there. And then we can draw a bunch of other computers that represent other people. So maybe there's one here, maybe one here, perhaps one there, maybe even one here. Okay, so we've got a bunch of other computers, but there's also other entities that exist. So namely, let's say Facebook. Let's say maybe a little bit over here. Let's draw Google. And they all interact with us. So I can go to Google to access data, but I might also want to go to Facebook. But I could also go to whoever this guy is, and I can also go over here. And I can go to any of them and get the same data. That's the interesting concept of decentralization. In the most common example, we're talking about Bitcoin, as you're kind of seeing on the slide right here. And with Bitcoin, what is represented, the shared knowledge, is a ledger. So let's draw that as like a little piece of paper. Obviously, it's a much bigger piece of paper, but you get the point. And so on this piece of paper, we have a bunch of transactions that have happened. So A sends money to B, B sends money to C, and maybe C sent money back to B. So obviously, this list can go super long, but you get the point. And with a network like this, everyone knows where all of the existing money is and who owns it, but nobody is in charge of actually stealing that money, and it's cryptographically secured so that if A actually sent it to B, then we can verify that B easily has it. So it's great in that sense, and that's kind of what blockchains and other types of technologies like that are trying to do. So why should this matter to you? So for starters, it's a much faster way to transfer global transactions. So what does that mean? That means that typically in the current model, I need to send money from my bank A to bank B, and that takes up to 3 to 5 days. With Bitcoin, that can happen, and the shortest amount of time is 10 minutes, and the longest amount of time could be a few days, which is probably equivalent, but regardless, it's still remarkably fast. And when you think about that in VR, what that means is if I draw a little buddy right here, and I want to hand him this coin, let's call it C, then the way I would do that is I just hand it over to him, and hopefully within potentially seconds, maybe minutes if it's Bitcoin, then he will actually have it, and that's super valuable. The other thing is privacy. So Bitcoin is probably a poor example of this, but there are other crypto technologies that allow us to pass transactions without anyone really having to know about it. But the flip side of it is everyone can know that a transaction happened, but might not know the amount, not really know that the parties are involved, but they know that money was transferred hands type of thing. So there's a huge amount of transparency because everyone's part of this network. And that there's no concept of like Facebook owning all your data. There's no concept of Google owning all your data. It opens up a potential new business model. So for example, instead of having to run ads, I can create a crypto coin that then has some certain amount of value to it, and I can hold some of that to earn money. So that's another interesting approach. You have faster computing, which I think is really, really interesting in the sense that, let's say that you have a CPU, it's okay, but you want to render this like super fancy image. Now, in a traditional sense, what you have to do is wait maybe hours, maybe a day. But if I can have this network that's willing to process things for me and I have to pay like a small fee in this cryptocurrency, that's a big deal. And it potentially gives Amazon a little run for their money with AWS. And if you have bunches and bunches of computers like that, that could potentially speed up some things that might take you a day down to minutes, potentially down to seconds, and that's a big deal. The last part, which I think is really important to VRs especially, is in any social space like I am in right now, you have this notion of a set of shared rules that everyone needs to abide by. And these shared rules can be agreed upon by everyone, and in a decentralized sense, what that means is that everyone is able to validate everyone else's actions and make sure they're legitimate. And if they're not legitimate, they'll be kicked out of the system. So in a decentralized way, no one's going to actually own that data. I'm going to keep coming back to that concept. No one owns that data, and as a result, you now have a way to have shared rules in a way that everyone can equally participate, and it's not like there's one central body ruling over us. So I think that's a huge deal as well. So let's transition here to some of the current VR and AR projects that are using blockchain. One of them that I'm really passionate about is Render Token. Now, what Render Token is a cryptocurrency that allows you to pay for processing power, especially on GPUs. And I think the really interesting part is the team is run by Otoy, and the people who do that. I probably have a video coming out soon that shows you how to use Otoy within Unity, but needless to say, they're a major important company that's working on making sure that everyone can render super high fidelity graphics that traditionally movies have been able to do for a long time. And so by decentralizing that and saying, hey, I have a GPU, why don't you pay me to run it, you can potentially speed up transactions a lot faster and in a secure way. And that is what makes Render Token an interesting project. It's still very early on, but needless to say, I think it's exciting. You have a couple other tokens like AR Token and Decentraland that are trying to work towards either sharing land or sharing items with an actual token. And having that in, if we have this ledger here, and instead of, oops, this is backwards. So we have this ledger here, and instead of A to B just sending coins, what if they were sending an item, or maybe they were sending virtual land? AR Token and Decentraland are both trying to work towards actually solving that issue. They're again, still early on, just like everything on this list, but I think the concept is interesting, particularly items, because what that means is that if I have a sword in game A and I want to transfer it to game B, I can do that with AR Token, provided that both the games actually support this. And I think that's an interesting concept that has a lot to be proven, but can still be super, super valuable. And last here you have High Fidelity. High Fidelity is a great company. They recently announced that they're creating this blockchain for the HFT token. And I think that's an interesting way to, it kind of combines the concepts of compute power on the VR whole ecosystem, as well as the ability to transact for items. So again, these are some high-level ones to look out for. There are a bunch of other cryptos that are in this space, but I think these are the ones that I'm looking out for. And for full transparency, I don't own any of these, but I think they're interesting projects to look out for even in their infancy. So last thing I want to mention is what are some resources, because as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm no expert in this field, and I just want to point you in the right direction towards researching things for yourself if you are interested in this. So for starters, I think YouTube is actually a pretty great resource to get opinions from a bunch of different people and see how they compare to your own. So Data Dash is a good channel if you want to see technical price action across various different crypto assets. You have Crypto Bobby, which I think is another great resource. Specifically, he does daily videos, but he also does live streams pretty regularly where he will just go through and try to answer as many people's questions as possible. So if you have any questions about crypto, then you can definitely go ask him. Again, just like me, he doesn't claim to be an expert. He doesn't want to be claimed as an expert. But if you're trying to bounce ideas off, I think it's another great resource. Box Mining is also interesting. He's kind of specializes in daily videos and interviews. So he'll go out to all the people who are working on the crypto technology, and he will just ask them questions, see what are the technical stuff, what are the kind of marketing and community-oriented stuff they're doing. So if you have any questions about a specific actual coin, you can probably find an interview with whoever's actually building that, which I think is another great resource. You have the white papers. Now, what white papers are? Technical document containing all of the things that a specific coin is trying to build. As you saw on the list of VR items, not many of them are even close to being ready. And I think the same is true for crypto as a whole. Not many of these cryptocurrencies are actually truly ready for the limelight. And what that means is that you need a source of truth, which is these white papers on what is actually going to be built as the tech continues to get better. And so if you have questions about any of the technical details of anything, you need to go to any of those crypto coins and check out their white paper to actually figure out what is going on. So that's a great resource. CoinMarketCap and On-Chain Effects, they're both great resources if you want to see the current price, some of the graphs related to that, and any other specific price details. And last but not least, you have Coinbase/GDAX, which they're both owned by the same company, and they allow you to exchange US dollar or the British currency to Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. There's probably a few more that are coming out in the near future. You also have Bittrex and Binance as great resources if you want to trade your Bitcoin or some of the other cryptos to other crypto technologies. So you can check out those, and I'll make sure to leave links in the description if you want to just go straight to the source. And the last thing I want to say here is we are still pretty early within the cryptocurrency. We're even earlier within VR, and that's super exciting to me because what that means is there's so much room to grow and so much research to be done that like no one really knows what the right answers are. That's the part I'm super excited about. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a lot of fun for me to make, and let me know again if there's any specific questions you have. I'll try to answer as many as I can, and let me know if you like this type of format or you want to see something completely different. Still a lot of, on my end, I'm still doing a lot of research and experimentation as well. So thanks so much for watching, and if you did like this video, make sure to smack that like button and subscribe because that helps me out a ton. And until next time, this has been FusedMan, and I'm signing out.